The Bible is a treasure. But not only is the Bible as a whole a treasure, the individual words of Scripture are a treasure. But not only are the individual words themselves a treasure, but often an author will bury a treasure in the text in order to teach a principled, primary treasure that we're to take away from any given part of Scripture. According to Dr. Maurice Solomon, in ancient Near Eastern cultures, they believed you learned better if you discovered something for yourself rather than simply being told something. In the West, we kind of have a transfer of information learning. I tell you something, you memorize that thing. But Easterners have a different approach. And because of that different approach, the information needs to be discovered. So the art of discovery was taught. It was everything. Which means often that when they would write their stories, and somewhere in the story there was something to be discovered, like a treasure. So you had all of these literary techniques, all of these things that the writers would use in order to kind of bury their treasure. All of these methods that they would employ to get the text focused on one specific treasure. One of these widely used techniques, one of these widely used methods was called a chiasm, or a chiastic structure. A chiasm means that the first part of the story mirrors the last part of the story. Now, this could be done in two different ways. They would either do it, and I'm just going to use letters for a minute. I'm going to put up some graphics to help us, but they would either go A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. That way they would mirror two parts of the story. Or they would use an inverted chiasm where they would go A, B, C, D, C, B, A. So put that graphic up real quick, Sue, if you don't mind. So they would either use one of two chiastic structures. They would go A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, or they would invert it and go A, B, C, D, C, B, A. Now, when they used an inverted chiastic structure, here's what would happen. The main point, see the second line? The treasure is the D. The A and the A mirror each other. The B and the B mirror each other. The C and the C mirror each other. And it really works like an arrow pointing to the main treasure of the text. So the A and the A, the B and the B, the C and the C are all pointing toward the main part of the text. Dr. Maurice Solomon says, it's like you have a baby paragraph, a mama paragraph, and a daddy paragraph, right? And they're working their way in to this main point. The Bible authors would use this structure to emphasize their treasure. Now, because we're in the West, now some of Western literature use this. Homer uses this, for instance, in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Some of his writings, he used chiastic structure. But the ancient Near East writers used it all the time. And it was taught to the people to look for these kind of things. And so because us in the West, we're not used to this. We're not used to digging for this or looking for this. So we're not used to it. But learning is good. And so in our text today in Joshua 2, there is an inverted chiastic structure. In fact, the entire chapter 2 is an arrow pointing to one main principled treasure that the author wants us to know. So put that next slide up. It's not a slide anymore. We don't even use ProPresenter. I mean, we use ProPresenter. We don't use PowerPoint. It's not a slide. It's just the next graphic. So here's the chapter broken down. Okay? Here's the chapter broken down. The first verse of the chapter is the commission by Joshua. Joshua is going to commission these spies to go into Jericho. The end of the chapter mirrors that. It's them returning back to Joshua. Okay, you see the mirror? They're commissioned by Joshua and sent out. End of the chapter, they're returning to Joshua. The next part of the chapter, verses 2 through 7, is the spies arriving, the concern that happens when the spies arrive, but then the protection of the spies. Of course, we know the protection of the spies by Rahab. Go to the next B. You have them escaping. The concern there is the protection of Rahab. Again, B and B mirror each other. And then right in the middle, do you see how it makes an arrow? A and B are pointing towards C. Both of them pointing towards C. The confession of faith by Rahab. Her confession of faith is the treasure in chapter 2. All the other stuff around it is important. It's all the Word of God. It is all the treasure. But the writer of Joshua wants us to understand, by using this literary technique, by using this kind of method, he is taking an arrow or an hourglass and he's pointing it toward her confession. I want to read her confession to us. And then we'll back up and we'll start at the beginning of chapter 2 and we'll work our way through it, spending the majority of the time where the author would want us to spend the majority of the time. Joshua chapter 2, 8 through 14. Here's Rahab's confession. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, where you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Actually, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but verses 8 through 14 is also a chiastic structure, inverted, pointing to her statement, for the Lord your God is God of the heavens above and the earth below. So not only is the whole chapter pointing toward 8 through 14, but then 8 through 14 is pointing to one specific statement. The Lord your God is God of the heavens above and the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and my mother, my brothers and my sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. We're going to read the rest of the text as we work through it. But since that is the main part of the text, I thought it was very important for us to read that, and then we will come to it in just a minute. As we work through this text, we're going to see the salvation of Rahab, and we are going to see why Rahab had so much courage to do what she did. Verse 1, this is the commission of Joshua. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. And they went and came to the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. Around 40 years before this, 12 spies were sent out by Moses. Okay? 12 men went to spy in Canaan, 10 were bad. 10 were bad and 2 were good. I learned that in church. It was a song. 12 men went to spy in Canaan, 10 were bad and 2 were good. What do you think they saw in Canaan? 10 were bad and 2 were good. Some saw giants big and tall. Anybody else remember that song? You learned it? 10 were unfaithful. They didn't believe, they didn't trust, they came back and they reported. 2 were faithful. The 2 were Caleb and Joshua. This time Joshua picks just 2. I think that is kind of a symbolic thing that he is doing. He's saying, last time we sent 12 and only 2 were righteous. This time we're only sending the 2 righteous ones. We're just going to leave the 10 out. Symbolically, he's saying, I'm only picking 2 guys, and I'm picking guys that I know are faithful to Yahweh and that we can trust to go spy out this land. We're not doing this whole sending some and hoping some come back faithful. And they were supposed to view the land, especially Jericho, which means that their main target was Jericho. When they sent the 12 spies out 40 years earlier, they were gone for a month. They searched the whole land for a month. These guys were gone for 3 days. So it means that really what he was doing was, go check out Jericho. This is the first place we're going to encounter after we cross over. Go check out Jericho. Now, I ask the question, why are we doing this? Why is Joshua sending 2 spies into Jericho? Because if we know anything about Joshua, when God told Joshua to do something, Joshua did it. There is not one word ever recorded in Scripture negatively about Joshua. Not one word. Every time Joshua is talked about, it's talked about as a faithful, courageous warrior of God. If God told Joshua, go take Jericho, Joshua's going to go, we're taking Jericho. He had already proven that 40 years earlier. We're going to go take it. He doesn't need to send 2 spies in there to check out it doesn't matter what's in there. God's eventually going to tell them, I asked me to walk around the walls. And they're just going to fall. He doesn't need these 2 spies. So we need to ask, well, then why are we sending spies into the land when Joshua's going to take the land no matter what? Well, I think we are probably right to think that this was all about saving Rahab and her family. God had something going on that Joshua didn't even know about. And so when God said, I want you to send 2 spies in, it wasn't so information came back and Joshua was like, ooh, now we'll take them. I didn't know before. This was about the saving of Rahab and her family. God had already been working in Rahab's heart, leading her to true faith in him. And now he was sending messengers to confirm her faith and to physically save her. So here's what's interesting. The story of Joshua, the book of Joshua, is a story about judgment and wrath on the Canaanites for their wickedness. Yet the book starts off with mercy and grace. See, the God of the Old Testament is the same as the God of the New Testament. We get this idea that the God of the Old Testament is this harsh, mad, mean God. He always saved those who repented and believed in him. And here, this story, we're going to read about conquest. I mean, the walls of Jericho are going to fall, and we're going to go take Ai, and we're going to read a lot of stuff that God does miraculously, taking out the Canaanites. Before it ever starts, though, God tells us the kind of God he is. In the midst of all of these wicked people, those that believe in me will get mercy and grace, and I will save them. And that's exactly what we're going to read about. It's about saving an immoral woman. I mean, look at just who Rahab was. First of all, she was a Gentile, okay? Which means she was outside of the covenant of promises that had just been given to Israel. Number 2, she is an Amorite. The Amorites were singled out by God for their absolute wickedness. They even had child sacrifices to their false gods. The Amorites were a wicked, wicked, nasty people. And she was a harlot, a prostitute, who sold sex for money. All of this combines, as I said, to make up an immoral woman. Yet God is sending 2 spies into her city to save her life. When the spies arrive, it says they go to this prostitute named Rahab and they lodge there. There is nothing in the syntax, nothing in the arrangement of the words, nothing in the use of the words that indicates to us that there was any kind of immoral behavior being pointed out here. In fact, the language used here and what we know about Jericho probably indicates that the house of Rahab was probably more like a lodging station where people would come passing through, and the manager of it was a madam. Think, just as an illustration, think like the Wild Wild West. You'd go into a saloon. It worked as multiple different things, right? You would come in, you'd get a drink, there'd be prostitutes. You could also lodge there. This is probably kind of a thing like that, where this wasn't just a place that you would come to get prostitutes. This was a place where you could come and stay and lodge. This was a public place that she ran. that she was in charge of. Now we come to the concern, the arrival and the concern and the protection of the spies. Verses 2 through 7. And it was told to the king of Jericho, behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered into your house, for they have come to search out this land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, true, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they were from. And when the gate was about to close at dark, the men went out. And I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought the men up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax and that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. This public place explains why the king knew about the men of Israel. If this was just her house, then they could have easily just snuck in and no one would have ever known these spies were there. But because this was a public place, people saw them. There were other people in her house. If this was a lodging station, there were other people there who then saw these men, and it got reported. Word spread quick. We got 2 Israelites in the camp. We got 2 Israelites here. Go tell the king. So that's how this happens. People were in and out, and she knows word's going to get out. So she hides them in probably what was a 2nd-story hidden room where she kept some of her valuables and possession, and obviously kept some flax and some things up in this 2nd story. When the king's men come to them, listen to how she responds. She says, I don't know who these men were. And I don't know where these men are going. But they left here and they went outside the gate. And if you hurry up and go fast, you can catch them. They're on the 2nd floor hiding out. And she says, go get them. Hurry, they're going to shut the gates for the night. You better get out there. And off they go out the gates, and the doors get shut. The actions of Rahab here reveal to us she is renouncing loyalty to the Canaanites and her king. She is saying, I am not loyal to this city, these people, or this king. Her allegiance and loyalty is being changed to Israel and to Joshua. She is willing to risk her own life to protect these strangers that she just met. When they were at their most vulnerable, she's risking everything here. And on account of Rahab's report, the men leave not only her house, they leave the city gates in hot pursuit of a trail that did not exist. And now we come to the main treasure of the text, Rahab's confession, the heart of the story. It is probably true, as I said earlier, that Rahab had already been converted before this confession. But you know what God always requires after he changes our heart? A public profession that our heart has been changed. It's one of the reasons why we do baptism. Baptism is a public profession, among other things, that God has changed me. We tell people, God has changed me. Jesus has saved me. There is a public expression of what God had done. And here the opportunity is given to her to demonstrate this faith and love and desire to follow God. The profession starts with her saying, fear has fallen upon the Canaanites, and all the inhabitants of the land are melting away before you. This is repeated again in verse 11. Let's talk about the fear, and then we'll talk about the melting away. The fear has come because, and the melting away, they've both come because they have heard about what God did at the Red Sea. Word has gotten into Jericho that these Israelites, 40 years ago, God parted the Red Sea. And these people walked across on dry ground. And Pharaoh, which by the way, Jericho was an Egyptian province. Pharaoh, our ultimate emperor and king, was killed by their God. And they have already laid siege to 2 other cities and destroyed them. And now they're on our doorstep. Now let's talk about the fear. Exodus 23:27. After God gives the 10 Commandments and he gives his covenant code, God seems to give this divine promise. Listen to these words. Exodus 23:27. I will send my terror before you. I will throw into confusion all the people against whom you shall come, and I will make your enemies turn their backs to you. God had promised 40 years earlier, my terror is going to go before you, and the Canaanites are going to be in fear of you when they hear what I've done. This was promised 40 years earlier. And then the melting away. The Song of Moses, after they cross the Red Sea, and Moses writes this song in Exodus 15:15. He says, now are the chiefs of Edom dismayed. Trembling seizes the leaders of Moab, and all the inhabitants of Canaan melt away. She's using the very words of the Song of Moses that was written 40 years ago that she had never heard. She's using the lyrics of the song that she had never heard. What confidence this must have been for the spies to hear this. Like, oh my word, she's quoting our Pentateuch to us. She's quoting some of our Bible to us. Then, in light of this, we get the remarkable statement in 11b. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth below. I want to mention 3 reasons why this phrase is so remarkable. Number 1, just on its face alone. Just on its own merit. Rahab states that Israel's God had dominion over the realms of heaven and on earth. Okay, that is a statement to say everything. Your God is God over everything. This broad scope would include the false gods of the Canaanites. That she, her entire life, had grown up believing these are in fact the gods that govern. And now she's saying, your God is God over everything. Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute who knew the culturous religious traditions of her people, affirming that Israel's God ruled over the very heavens and earth that her own religious traditions asserted belonged to Baal and Asherah and some of the other false gods. She had been taught her whole life, Baal rules this, and Asherah rules this, and this God rules this, and this God rules this. And now in her declarations, she's saying, none of that is true. Your God rules all of it. Not what I've been taught my whole life. A second thing that's remarkable. Rahab states that Israel's God, Yahweh, was indeed the only God. She says Yahweh in her confession. Look, remember we've told you in the Old Testament Bible, when the English word Lord is used and it's capital L, capital O, capital R, and capital D in the text, it is the word Yahweh. She is saying, Yahweh, your God, is God. There is no other gods. Not only is your God in charge of everything, there's no other gods that are even under him. There is only one God. She was saying Baal is not God. Asherah is not God. The Babylonian gods, Marduk and Ishtar, they were not gods either. This was the personal name of Israel's God that she is using to say, all these other personal names that we've created and made up, we've just made them up. They're not real. There is only one God, and his personal name is Yahweh. That's what this statement is saying. Echoing what they had already read in the first 5 books that was given. Deuteronomy 4:35, to you it is shown that you might know that Yahweh is God, and there is no other besides him. Again, echoing. She's echoing the Pentateuch. Echoing the first 5 books that have been given to Israel. And then the third thing that's so remarkable is Rahab's words become even more significant when we realize that this phrase, in the heavens, above and the earth below had only been mentioned 3 times in the Pentateuch, and every time that it is mentioned, it is God's exclusive sovereignty and the prohibiting of worshiping and making idols. So she's saying, what my people do here is wicked and sinful. First of all, the fact that she's even using the exact language of Israel is crazy to me. What this means is God has been changing her heart and revealing to her his very words, even though she has yet to get them from Israel. She's already getting them. And she's using them and declaring them in a statement against her own people and the false gods of the Canaanites. So when she says this, she's doing more than trying to save her own skin here. She is acknowledging that the God that she had heard about is the only true God to worship. And she has changed her entire belief system to cling to this truth. I titled the message, The Salvific Courage of a Shady Lady. God has changed this shady lady. And only God could do this in her heart. There is no natural explanation for this woman knowing what God had revealed to Israel already, other than God had done it. And now this faith in Yahweh plays out in actions. She desires to enter into covenant with these 2 men. She says, swear to me by Yahweh. She uses the personal name of God again. Swear to me by Yahweh, as I have dealt kindly with you, you will deal kindly with my father's house. This is not just covenant language because she says swear. Okay, swear to Yahweh. That's not, yes, that's covenant language, but that's not all the covenant language is, because here she also uses the word hesed. She says, as I have given you hesed, you give me hesed. Hesed is a Hebrew word that demonstrates God's love toward Israel in entering into covenant with them. It is a concept that describes a sense of loyalty and mercy and compassion toward another person. And Rahab has shown this to them, and now she's saying, as I have shown hesed to you, show hesed to me and my family. Enter into covenant with me. And of course they say, our life for yours. Our life for yours. A Gentile Amorite prostitute has been given not only mental knowledge of Yahweh, she has been given saving faith in her heart to follow him. And as a result, she risked her life for the 2 spies, abandoning her allegiance to her people, her gods, and her king, and entering into Hesed with the chosen people of God. Now we come to the escape. The men escape down through a window by a rope because her house was built on the city wall. Now, I want to say something about this because when I was little, I thought, okay, you've got a wall. How is this lady's house on the wall? Like, I didn't quite understand. In this ancient Near East, when it says wall, think walls. Think 2 giant walls with a top on it where soldiers could walk around on top, but 2 giant walls with homes inside the 2 walls. That people could actually, they lived inside the walls. So her house, her lodging was inside the 2 walls with a window facing out of the walls. And this is how the men escape. She puts down a rope and the men go down, and that's how they escape. She tells them what to do next, and they tell her what to do next. She says, after you get out of here, spend 3 days in the hills. And after the men that I sent on your trail come back into the city empty-handed, then you can go back to your people. And she says, and they say, we got it. And then look at what they say to her. They said, behold, this is verse 18, when we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. And you shall gather into your house your father and mother and your brothers and all of your father's household. Then if anyone goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood will be on his own hand, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is within the house, his blood shall be on our head. Take a scarlet cord, throw it out this same window. So when we come back here, we will know not to attack this place. And you and all of your family will be saved. Much theological talk has been made of this method. But I do want to point out this. There is a remarkable parallel between the red cord that marked her house and the blood of the lamb spread upon the doorpost of the Jewish homes in Egypt at Passover. God said, take the red blood and wipe it on the door of your home. And when the angel of death comes through, they will see the blood and pass over your house, and you will not receive the judgment that others will receive. Now, we know that all points toward Christ. Well, so does the red cord. This red cord, again, is a picture of the blood and the sacrifice. And God's judgment was going to pass over it once again. God spared those faithful to him in both cases. Obedient Israelites in one case and obedient non-Israelites in the other. Rahab's going to be saved. Her family's going to be saved. Rahab is going to marry a Jewish man. A Jewish man from the tribe of Judah named Salmon. They're going to have a son. Their son's name? Boaz. The manliest name in the Bible. I said that when I taught Ruth upstairs. That's a manly name. Be like, what's your husband's name? Boaz. It's a manly name. I ain't gonna lie to you. You say Neil? That doesn't sound super manly. You say Boaz? I mean, it just sounds manly. Well, Boaz is Rahab's son. Boaz is going to marry Ruth, a Moabite. They're going to have a son named Obed. Obed is going to be the father of Jesse, and Jesse is going to be the father of King David. As James Montgomery Boyce writes, Rahab was not given a second-class salvation. From the very beginning, she receives the whole thing. Her position was equal to any other citizen in Israel, and in proof of that, she was brought into a noble line of the tribe of Judah and became an ancestor of our Lord. At this point, the story wraps up pretty quickly. The spies head back. Eventually, they get to Joshua. Their declaration is simple and confident. It is a direct contrast to the 10 guys that come in, 40 years earlier and give their report. They basically just quote Rahab, and they're like, this is what we heard. They're scared to death, and their hearts are melting, and the city is ours. It's interesting to me that Joshua plays a very, very small part in chapter 2. This story is all about Rahab. It's all about Rahab. In one of the most nationalistic books in all of the Bible, the story of Rahab serves a purpose for us, that the promise God made to Abraham in Genesis 12 is being fulfilled. Do you remember the promise God made to Abraham in Genesis 12? He said, I'm going to make from you, your ancestors going to be like the stars in the sky, like the sand on the shore. And here's the promise that was made. All the people of the earth will be blessed through you. And now, a Gentile Amorite prostitute is being brought into the line of Abraham. Not by blood, by faith. Calvary Hill, if you are a Christian here today, you are Rahab. You are Rahab. People who were by nature alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers to the covenant of promise, without hope and without God in this world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who are far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. God made known to you the greatest saving act in human history, and He brought you into contact with His messenger somewhere along the way where you confessed and believed. He called you forth in faith, and through His grace, you have laid your life on the line. You've turned your back on whatever old allegiance you had, and you have identified yourself with God's people. And as a sign of God's great work, we have taken the blood of Christ, that scarlet cord, and we have spread it on our lives. We said, this is our identity. This is who we are. In the end, this morning, I want us to think about the courage that this must have taken. And make no mistake about it, she got this courage because God had changed her life. But I want to give you the reason why she could be so courageous. I mean, she risked her lives to spare these people. The reason goes right back to the treasure of our text. She came to believe that Yahweh, the God of Israel, was in fact God of the heavens above and the earth below, supremely sovereign and in control of everything, so she could be risky for God. I can obey what He's called me to do. I can lay my life on the line because He's in charge of my life. She could risk everything. And she did. Risk everything because she believed Yahweh was the God of heaven and earth. What about us? You know, if we're Christians in here, we have literally laid our lives down at the feet of King Jesus and said, our life belongs to you. But then when it comes to the practical, risky obedience, sometimes we get really scared. Don't we? We're like, I'll give you my eternity, but tomorrow? I don't know about tomorrow. Yes, a million years from now, you got that. But today? Tomorrow? Next week? The way that we become a people who can risk obedience no matter what it may cost us is to truly believe that our God is God over all the heavens and on the earth. When we talk about theology, we don't want it just to be information in your head. When we talk about the sovereignty of God over every detail, we are not just giving you theological information to plug away so that you can debate it with somebody at some point, or that you can talk about, well, I believe God's in charge of everything, and somebody else says, well, I believe God's in charge of some stuff, but there's free will, there's all this other stuff. The reason why we give you theology here is so that the theology that you get in your brain moves from just your brain into your mind and into your heart, and then you can live as God has called you to live based on that reality that you now believe. So when we say God is sovereign over the universe, then when He calls you to do something, our basis for stepping out in faith is the fact that we know God has got us no matter what. As the spy said, even our lives. God, if you call us to give our lives, we will go. John Piper said something a long time ago that resonated with me and stuck with me, and I've never been able to get out of it. He said, what if God called your children to a foreign country where people had never heard the gospel and their lives were going to be at risk every single day? He said, most of us would not want our kids to go. He said, what if your child then went to that country and died giving the gospel to them? He said, we would call it a great tragedy. And he said, it is not a great tragedy. It is a glorious thing when we risk obedience when Jesus calls us to do something, no matter what that means for us. And what we want, what I want for my life and what I want for our church's life is for us to be the kind of people that when God says, I want you to go here and do this, we say, we are willing to be obediently risky because our God is God over the heavens and the earth, and he's got us no matter what. I love this story of Rahab. It's beautiful, beautiful, for so many reasons. So I pray that you would contemplate that question this week. Am I trusting God the way I need to trust God to be willing to be obediently risky for him? I have seen people in these very seats be risky for Jesus. I've seen it with my own eyes. Do things that they've never done before in their entire life because God was moving in their hearts to do it. And listen, it could be a wide range of risky. Okay? It can just be stepping out in faith to do something that God's been calling you to do, and everybody else wouldn't think it was a big deal, but for you it was a big deal because you stepped out and did something that was uncomfortable for you or that you didn't want to do or that like you stepped out and you did it. All the way to giving your life for Jesus. So I don't want you to think being risky just means dying for Jesus. That's the ultimate risky obedience. All the way down to God's been telling me to speak to my coworker about Jesus, and I haven't done it because I'm afraid what she's going to think. Your God is God of heaven and earth. Whatever God is moving on your heart today, tomorrow, ask yourself the question, I have trusted him with my forever. Where am I not trusting him with my today?